Thank you for joining me for the InfoZone's first virtual exhibition of Bob Silva's photographs. I'm Megan Wilbar, Museum Coordinator at the InfoZone Museum at the Rawlings Library. And today we have two videos that show Bob Silva's artwork, photography. Since he didn't have a show that was scheduled for June, we decided to show everyone his work virtually. Bob is not only a photographer, he's also an author, and he has over 40 years of experience in the aerospace industry. He's written five books, 2 adult books and 3 children's books. All are available for checkout at the library, and you'll be able to see his work here. The first video that I'm going to show is Beautiful Destinations Through Photography, and that'll be the virtual tour of the work that Bob would have shown in the InfoZone had we have had a physical show. The second program is Characterizations of Photography, and that will show, Bob will give you more in depth on his practice of photography and kind of the elements that go into his work. So I hope you enjoy it, and here it is.
Our tour will start in Africa, the second largest continent in the world. So much to say about this continent with so little time. This camel tribesman in Ethiopia let us know that life is simple but precious with every breath one takes. Our next stop will be in Barcelona, Spain. We are seeing a couple of works mastered by Antoni Gaudí, the greatest architect of all times during the 18th and early 1900s. On to Washington, D.C., across the Pacific, with a stop in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. represents the United States of America. Some of the greatest Smithsonians and museums in the world reside here. From Washington, now south to Florida, where we will stop at the Everglades National Park, the largest subtropical wilderness in the United States. Plays a very important part in the ecosystem. Texas spring flowers and the bluebonnets are as beautiful as one will ever find throughout Texas. On to San Antonio and the Riverwalk to tour the 5 Spanish colonial missions on the river. From the Alamo, one can bike to the remaining 4 other missions dating back early 1700s. From Texas, we're heading westward, and westward we go to White Sands, New Mexico, with 275 square miles of gypsum sand. White Sands is a natural geology wonder dating back some 280 million years. Now, from White Sands, we will head due north to Cimarron, New Mexico, where we'll find this beautiful buck antelope in a field of sunflowers. In Cimarron, we visit a Western music performance. At the Philmont Scout Ranch, this beautiful Western entertainer from Utah was participant in the annual Cimarron Cowboy Music and Poetry event. From here, we're heading north on to Colorado. The wild horses supposedly date back to those brought by the Spanish explorers in the late 1500s through the 1600s. From here, we're headed to, where else? Cripple Creek and Victor. Open pit gold mining continues in Victor, Colorado to this day. The massive size of this crater continues to deliver gold to its investors. Old mining structures and elevators make for memorable photos. From Cripple Creek and Victor, now we will head southeast into the Comanche grasslands and the Purgatoire River Canyonlands. From here, a short distance, within the Purgatoire River Canyonlands, rock art prevails, hidden in remote canyon walls in southeast Colorado. The buffalo and deer and rock art are a representation of how the Native Americans depended upon them for livelihood. While in this area, we will visit Bent's Old Fort in La Junta, Colorado. The fort was reconstructed of the 1840 adobe fur trading post of the Santa Fe Trail. Now, as we ventured upstairs in the fort, we find a frontierman shooting pool. Yes, even in the 1840s, pool shooting was a way to spend some leisurely time on the open frontier. Bent's Old Fort is not a place to miss when in southern Colorado. From here, we're headed west across the Rocky Mountains down into Telluride. This beautiful scene I call my watercolor was taken around the mountain range of Telluride. From Telluride, we are headed to Lake City. The beehive coke oven symbolizes a rich history of mining ore. Lake City is surrounded by the San Juan Wilderness Range. As the big Rocky Mountain elk are bugling, the fall leaves are changing to beautiful gold. The scene was taken in southern Colorado near the town of Stonewall. Beautiful butterflies can be found throughout Colorado, and this painted lady appeared on my shrubbery one morning. From Colorado, we're headed west and southwest. We are headed southwest to Arizona, where I will make a stop in Tucson. The Swirl National Park east and west offer plenty of touring and hiking opportunities. While in Old Tucson, we will visit Mission San Xavier, which is a National Historic Landmark. The mission was founded in 1692, with the current church built in 1783. From here, we're headed north out of Tucson, and we're headed where but to Lake Havasu, Arizona. The bridge was bought on April 18th, 1968 for a winning bid of $2.4 million. From Lake Havasu, we're headed north, a short distance, where else but to the Grand Canyon National Park. There are trails that lead down to the bottom of the canyon. The 8-mile or the 10-mile trail can be taken to the Phantom Ranch on the Colorado River. The National Park Service maintains the north and south rims, being some 10 miles across the canyon. From the Grand Canyon, we're headed east across the state of Arizona, and we will be making our next stop at Canyon de Chelly. The monument encompasses some 84,000 acres of land with a north and south touring rim. Next, we will head up to one of the canyons where we will see the Spider Rock Spire towers some 800 feet above the ground. Ancient ruins of the Anasazi or ancestral pueblos. Archaeologists believe that people lived here as far back as 5,000 years ago. Canyon de Chelly is considered the longest continuously lived place in North America. From Canyon de Chelly, traveling west across the Navajo Nation, we arrive at the Navajo National Park, the Patagon Cliff Dwellings. There are 3 large pueblos going back to the 13th centuries, located between canyon walls. From here, we continue to head west, and we are headed to Lake Powell, Arizona, on the Colorado River. But besides the river, there are other things to see and do. You are looking at what I call God's creation, a swirl of pink. The pinky sandstone and the curvatures within the slot canyons present amazing photo scenes. While in the area, one shall not miss Glen Canyon Dam tour. Also visit Horseshoe Bend and Rainbow Bridge. From Lake Powell, we will be visiting as we head east to Monument Valley, Arizona, in the very northern section of Arizona. This is what I call God's country within the Navajo Nation and a photographer's dream. If one is lucky to be there after or during a rain, or when the clouds are draping the beautiful buttes. Some of the buttes rise between 400 to 1,000 feet. From Monument Valley, we're headed northwest, and we shall enter into the state of Utah. Bryce Canyon National Park. Bryce is one of the most beautiful places that I have ever visited, and it's fairyland to me. On a high plateau, one will look down to the amphitheaters filled with beautiful hoodoos, irregular columns of rocks, and spires. It's a geological wonder of the world. From Bryce Canyon, we head west through the southern part of Utah. The next stop will be Kodachrome, Basin State Park, Utah. At Kodachrome, one will admire the beautiful red and white spires and the landscape that surround the area. From Kodachrome, we continue west and we will enter into the Grand Staircase Escalante National Monument. Here one will see sandstone formations at Devil's Gardens. Amazing cliffs, canyons, terraces, and plateaus. Natural bridges, slot canyons, arches, and so much more to see in this area. Between Bryce and across Escalante, one will be on one of the most beautiful roads, and that is Scenic Byway 12. From Escalante, we will head north in Utah to where else? Into the Canyonlands, in Canyonlands National Park, where we'll make a stop at Mesa Arch. Mesa Arch, another beautiful earth formation that looks over miles and upon miles of Utah's Canyonlands, about 527 square miles of area. From Mesa Arch, we will continue our trip northward into Arches National Park. North to Moab, Utah, and to Arches National Park. Arches has some over 2,000 stone arches, but the most popular and most visited is Delicate Arch. Delicate Arch stands 46 feet high and 32 feet wide. From Arches, we will head west across Nevada and barely entering into California. There, we will visit Death Valley National Park. But beware, as it also the hottest and driest of the national parks. Ideal times to visit is between October to April. As we're seeing here, a rusty old car. It would not have been a pleasant experience. From Death Valley, we're continuing west, and where else but to Big Sur, State Route 1 in California. Although State Route 1 goes on for some 655 miles along the coast of California, my favorite segment is from Santa Barbara to Carmel, about 225 miles. My last photo, and definitely one of my favorites, is titled Breakers at My Feet. I hope you have enjoyed touring with me today. Please visit my website at www.twogunspublishing for my published books or for email correspondence. All photography is copyrighted. 2020 B. Silva. Welcome to Characterization of Photography. I'm Bob Silva. As a photographer over the years, I have accumulated a very large collection of pictures. What you are about to see are some beautiful scenes from around the world. I plan to emphasize some of the finer elements within my photos that immediately capture your attention at first glance. So let's begin our tour of some beautiful photography. My first scene will be of the swirl cactus. Simplicity, but yet attractive. Some elements that make it attractive are the configuration of the swirl. Arms that grow vertically upward and can take from 75 to 100 years before they appear. Size and the color. The size goes to 40 to 60 feet in height. The next scene we're going to be taking a look at is a rusty old car in Death Valley. This is a complex scene, but intriguing and wonderful. There are many elements that make this scene what it is, finds along with finding some hidden surprises. Rusty car, orientation 30-degree angle, desert surrounding, the colors, the hue in the background, the mountains. And from here, then we're going to look into the Antelope. Here's a scene that was taken just south of Cimarron. This Antelope decided he was going to go and walk into the sunflower field. I just couldn't resist taking this photo, and he came out beautiful. From here, we're going to move on west, and we're going into Bryce Canyon. For those that have ever been to Bryce, know how beautiful it is. They have many hoodoos within there. Hoodoos are earth formations that sort of stand vertical. Gorgeous, gorgeous area. An area that must be visited for the cameraman. We're going to continue going west and onto Highway 1 along Big Sur. Those that have ever driven Big Sur along from north of Santa Barbara and heads all the way to Carmel know the beautiful scenery along the ocean. This scene here has some beautiful red poppies that are in the very front of the scene. Next, for those that like to hike, this is a hike that I took a number of years ago down to the bottom of the Grand Canyon, 8 miles down. And as a person gets down to the bottom, then there's a bridge, and the bridge just seems to fade right into this wall of rocks. It's another one of those amazing areas to see. And once you're down at the bottom and then you come back up, now you want to take some more photos of the Grand Canyon, and you cannot, it's hard to take any type of bad photos of the Grand Canyon. But still, morning and evening are still the best. We're going to now step into one area that is God's country here. This is Monument Valley. It is another area. This is in Arizona, northern Arizona, and it is a beautiful area with many red buttes, as you can see here. It goes on for miles. Another place to visit. Closer to home now, let's visit our gold mining pits. This are in Victor. This is right around Cripple Creek. This is one huge pit. And for those that have never had a chance to go down to it, it is a real experience. Many, many elements can be seen here. Those are the steps. Here was a photo I couldn't resist by taking. It stands out. There's a lady with her scarf, and the red scarf, and the way she's holding the chicken definitely represents a good frontier lady during the 1800s. A beautiful, beautiful scene. Now in Bent's Fort, this is another image of a gentleman, could be representing the traders or the trappers or traders of the era of the 1800s, and his white leather coat and jacket just stands out with a red vest on there. We are now going to head a little northwest of Durango into an area known as Canyon de Chelly. This is a national park. It is in Navajo country, but Canyon de Chelly has 2 major canyons, and it's another one of those areas that a person just can't miss. As we're in Navajo country in Arizona, and we head continue west across the state, we're going to go into an area of a Navajo Nation. And this area, you can see an alcove. Within the alcove, you can see the ancient ruins. These are ruins that date back to the Anasazi. You ever want to be a painter, water painter? This next scene was taken on the west side of the Rockies, and the day was a snowy day up in the high mountains with the winds blowing. And when it came down to developing this scene, it came out looking like a watercolor paint. We are staying in the mountains in this area now. I'm showing you is in the area of Lake City. This is south of Gunnison. And up in those mountains, a lot of mining went on in Colorado in the 1800s. This one, I was able to find a couple of honeycomb. And this was a beautiful valley. Portraits, I'm not into shooting just strictly portraits, but I couldn't pass this one up. This is a lady, Western country, Western singer. She's from Utah. She was at a Western show just south of Cimarron, New Mexico, and the photo just came out beautiful. Now we're going to head across the ocean, and we're heading over to where else? Spain. And what are we going to be seeing? We're going to be seeing some of Antoni, the great architect, Gaudi, Antoni Gaudi's great creations. He was a great architect. He has created, and back in the 1800s, he created many beautiful scenes and designs. And this are a couple. One of them is this church that we're looking at right now. Sagrada Familia, I believe it's the name of it. Definitely want to spend some time there. Now we come back across the ocean. Where else are we going to stop? We're going to stop in Washington, D.C. Now, here is a case. If you're looking into going in photography, if you can take shots at night, you can take shots about anything. This was one of my first ones many, many years ago that told me I could be a photographer. Now we're heading down to Texas, and we're heading down to the Riverwalk in San Antonio. This is one of the missions down there. I believe this is San Jose, but there's 4 of them, along with the Alamo, and they're all along the Riverwalk. The architect is from this one's from the 1700s. Coming back into the San Luis, here we're looking at one of those wild coats that just I had an opportunity to get some beautiful shots of, and he's just looking and staring at me. Beautiful, beautiful animals. We're going to head back into Utah, and we're going to go to Arches. Arches is an area that you can spend forever within the arches in the Canyonlands. Beautiful arches of all types, sorts, sizes, and the list goes on. From Arches, you can head into the Canyonlands, and once you start heading south into the Canyonlands, you're going to run into Mesa Arch. This is what we are looking at right now, Mesa Arch. Just another one of those great formations that just attract hundreds of people each year that come down to take none but photos of it. Well, from the Canyonlands, from the mid portion of the Canyonlands of Utah, I'm heading all the way down to the southern part of Utah into an area known as Escalante. I was there last year, and I took a number of great photos, and this was one that truly represents and has a taste of the Southwest. While you're down there, you sure don't want to miss the Natural Bridges National Park, and this here was one of the natural bridges that I ran into. This was up on the Escalante River after I hiked up into the river. Within Escalante, there's another area known as Devil's Garden. Within that area, this is another great scene. And this, to me, I call this my Sandstone whale. So this is another beautiful area. You can wander. It's BLM land. You can walk forever. Now, next to home, one evening I drifted down to the reservoir and walking up on top of the upper ridge, and all of a sudden I look down in the water, and here's this beaver just swimming away. And I looked down, I had my camera and my telephoto, and I was able to capture some beautiful, beautiful photos of this beaver. Now, and for those that like to hike and go into the backcountry and see some beautiful areas, there's a place at Lake Powell, and it has some slot canyons. This ones that we're looking at are known as Antelope Slot Canyons. Um, they are gorgeous. They're red, pink, sandstone, and you enter between 11 and 2, and the sun comes in through the fine crevice of the slot canyon, and this is what you see, and this is what you get. Definitely will have to go prepared with your wide angle lenses, though. Well, returning back to San Luis and the wild horses, one evening I was coming up from Taos, New Mexico, and I noticed some of the wild horses had come into one of the ponds. So I stopped, and they left the ponds and were heading back into the scrub, and one of them decided to lay down and shake its legs. I always looking for motion in my fishing. This is back. This scene that we're looking at now is one of the ones I captured along Big Sur. This one draws your attention for one little thing to me, and that is one little bird on one little branch up on the very top. The rest of it is nice photo, but that little bird draws my attention. Well, for those that have ever been to Death Valley, this is one of the formations that you'll see in Death Valley. And there are so many beautiful areas in Death Valley, but definitely you want to go between October and April. This next scene represents some trappers, pioneers on their horses up the Arkansas River. This is representing the 1800s. And I just found that this was sort of a very interesting photo to take. Well, everything that we've seen, I've taken, except for this one scene that we're looking at. This is a gorgeous scene. I gave my daughter down in Austin last year and said, hey, go take me some photos for my book, children's book. And she came back with a number of them, and I picked this one out. My daughter, Janelle, did a beautiful job on that one. Well, we're going to return back to Canyon de Chelly. Like I said, Canyon de Chelly is just amazing. This is a photo of some of the ruins up in the alcoves and down at the bottom. And if you look closely, there is a lot of details and a lot of things to be learned from the way the ancient people lived. This next one is I gave a tour at the Davidson Ranch a number of years ago. This are some petroglyphs, rock art, and this were three people and their horses on a cliff that had been either picked or scribbled in there. Now, this next one that we're looking at, this is John Carson. John Carson is a relative to Kit Carson. He works at Bentford. And he's one of the live individuals in there that represents the daily working of the bent fort going back to the 1830s. Very interesting photo. This one here, again, we're returning back to the Davidson Ranch. This is truly representative. I love rock art. I'm always looking for detail and trying to figure out what people had on their minds when they did the art. And this one here, it doesn't take a lot to figure out that the buffalo was their bread and butter. Canyon de Chelly. This is an area of Canyon de Chelly. There's two major canyons in Canyon de Chelly. This one has a large rock tower, better known as Devil's Tower. And here we're looking out across, and you can see the peak of Devil's Tower, but you can see the beautiful canyon back in there. Well, we have a tendency to borrow and buy things from different countries. This was Lake Havasu. This is the London Bridge, and it was actually bought from Europe and brought over, put in the middle of the desert of Arizona. They created a lake pond. It's become the Arizona's playground now. Now, this area is late fall in the Colorados, and I was up above Trinidad, west of there, on one of the highways, and I took this photo a couple of years ago. Just shows the beautiful, beautiful golds of the trees in fall. Here's a ranch down by the Comanche grasslands I was at a number of years ago, and this big guy was just sitting in this field, and I just had to take a photo of him, and he was posing for me, and after I had him developed, I understood why, because it just made for a beautiful scene. All throughout this country, a lot of mining. People are up in Victor or Cripple Creek, you will see much of the old mining rigs, towers, elevators that were used back in the turn of the century, the 1800s. For this last one, I threw in another saguaro cactus. This one here has the ocotillo plant. The ocotillo is an interesting plant. It grows about 20 feet high, and in this case, it added to the saguaro. For my last scene, this is a scene you don't have to go very far for those who want to go into photography and light. This one I took out of my front step, and this is a case of blending. If you can learn how to blend your colors with your main element or subject, you can go on and do anything. And this is what this photo showed. I definitely thank you, and that is my presentation.